Marty, the holiday season's coming up. How are you going to send your gifts out to your family? Canada Post, perhaps?
Don't get me started. Funny you'd ask. Actually, I've started my Christmas shopping, and I go through Amazon, man. Like I maybe I'm going to set myself a new goal this year. Maybe I'll do all my Christmas shopping without leaving the house. I bet you it's possible.
Wow,
I,
that's a goal.
I certainly don't need Canada Post. Like, I mean, yeah, Canada Post. They literally threatened. I mean, I had to. Let me backtrack. You know what I learned this week about Canada Post? If I want to drive engagement on my Twitter account and get people, you know what they say, good news is any advertising is good advertising or whatever. I've been shit posting about Canada Post, no pun intended. And man, it's just created mass, like, I'm being attacked. The swarm of posties that, like, why do I hate Canada Post so much? Or why
Wait,
do
they're
I
attacking you over it. People are getting defensive about Canada Post. What is it?
Oh, Clyde, they're getting defensive. They're calling me every name in the book. I'm getting all sorts of emails. Apparently, working for Canada Post is the most difficult work in the world. Like, it's more difficult than being a coal miner. It's more dangerous than being a soldier. It's more demanding than being a pilot. Like, it's and
What?
I probably had 6 people say, "I dare you to apply to Canada Post and do the job for 2 weeks." I'm like, what? Walk around with a bag and go put flyers in a mailbox?
Wow. In my
Okay,
town,
just because we
there's a
did
post
this.
office. No, in my
Yeah,
town, there's a
just
post office not very far away. And apparently they're so busy. I always go in there and there's nobody really doing anything, but they're so
yeah.
busy that they've actually taken half of their parcels and they pawned it off onto a local London Drugs, which is like a Shoppers Drug Mart out here.
Yeah,
And they have
and just
like another part post office. It's crazy.
and just because we should talk them today, you'll probably get some nasty comments on the
Oh
video
wow!
when you
I
release
can't wait
it.
to go read them. I don't know what people are saying
Yeah,
about
no,
Canada
I
Post.
mean
I've never really had any good things to say about Canada Post. I never use them. I always use like some private shipper if I do, because if you don't, then you don't know if you're going to get your stuff to where it's going.
Well, they're threatening. They gave notice yesterday, so they can. Yesterday they were within 72 hours of going on strike, so they can go on strike as early as whatever Saturday morning.
Not in
And
July, right before Christmas, right?
yeah, sure, right before Christmas. But even now, people are laughing at them, going, "Come on, go on strike for all you care." Like, nobody, how many people? I mean, you send a letter to grandma, and if your letter to grandma doesn't get it on Canada Post this year, call grandma or whatever. And people got really offensive. So then I had to get real about Canada Post, and I went and looked at their financial statements. I mean, they are losing $500 million a quarter. So they're on track this year for losing $2 billion. And then same thing, people are, and I pointed out they're a crown corporation, and people are like, they're self-sufficient. They live off their own earnings. I'm like, their own earnings? They lost $2 billion. Like, how do you, like, if you have a loss as a business, then you only have 2 choices. If you have a loss as a business, fold or go borrow more money. But in the case of Canada Post, they won't borrow more money. They'll just go to Mama, the crown corporation owned by the federal government, and ask for more money. So why am I pissed off at Canada Post? I'm pissed off because it's an organization that hasn't adapted with the changing times. And we're not the only country in the world with a postal service. Almost every country in the world had a postal service with similar problems, and all of them have made adjustments. It's incredible how many countries around the world have like once a week or twice a week, mail service. You don't need it every week, every day. Anyways, we've talked about Canada Post too much.
The USPS went before it was public. It used to be a private institution, and they used to do morning and afternoon mail service. The government took it over. Yeah, and then the government took it over, and pretty soon they had once a day, or sometimes once a week. Yeah, like the government does not do things efficiently. That's just. Well, that kind of segues into a great thing. I mean, there's so many things to segue into, because we could talk about other labor disputes and probably get to that after. But a lot of people are talking about government efficiency, and that being the government department of government efficiency, DOGE, for example, or actually is the anagram, or what do you call that?
Acronym.
And yeah, that this is in the United States. This isn't here in Canada, but this has been an announcement recently from Donald Trump. People are getting pretty excited about it. And this was the Trump-Vance transition team. They put out this on Donald Trump's Twitter, saying basically that Vivek and Elon are going to be heading Doge. They're going to be heading the government, or
the Department of Government Efficiency.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's exciting because Elon Musk is, well, I think he's got a huge stake in this one, as he's self-proclaimed, and he's the top taxpayer of all time. He paid the most amount of taxes last year, set a record, and of course, he wants to make sure it's being spent efficiently. Why not?
That's smart. I never. Thanks for pointing that out. I mean, when I saw these announcements, the first thing that come to mind is he's an innovative person, so he's probably pretty good at finding efficiencies. He's into artificial intelligence, which I think is the future, and he showed the whole world that, you know, he bought Twitter, and apparently he laid off like 80% of the people at Twitter, and it works better than it did before. So he was a great candidate for those reasons. But you bring up another reason. Yeah, he's probably
$10 billion last year he paid in taxes.
Holy smokes.
$10 billion.
Yeah.
He had to fork that money out, and he wants it to be put to some good stuff. I mean, anybody with that kind of capital, they want to take that capital and they want to be put to work. They don't want it to just get, you know, chewed up by some bureaucracy, or several bureaucracies in these governments that we have these days. That's all it is. It's just tons and tons of bureaucracy where lots of people are churning out nothing and paying themselves handsomely. And we've seen this all.
Well, remember last week you shared that great video of, I love that video from last week, where they replaced the words government,
a democracy with
bureaucracy.
It's a threat to our bureaucracy.
Right? No, and so and at first I wondered if those letters were real, right? Because there's a lot of those letters coming out. Like, put that letter back up. We don't need to read the whole letter, but you know, it says, there was one thing at first on that letter that made me wonder. Statement from President Donald Trump, right? And I thought, well, no, he's the president-elect, but technically, even though he's president-elect, but he was once the 45th president, and the Americans keep that title forever, right? Like, he's always,
you're always Mr. President after
that. So it's okay so at first I saw that and I thought they're fake, but no, they're not fake. And there's a whole bunch of these kinds of letters circulating. But let's stay on this topic for just 1 second. This is going to make a lot of people who've seen this letter from Trump on efficiencies have already copied that same letter and shared it with their local politicians. I shared it with Danielle Smith. Lots of people shared it with Danielle Smith and said the same thing. It's like, hey, Danielle, like, you know, there isn't a government in Canada. I guarantee there isn't a government in Canada that couldn't use a DOGE person and find 10%, 15, 20% efficiency. Guaranteed.
Well, and for Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy to be heading that department, that's awesome. It's great news.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to see Vivek as, like, I don't know, press secretary or something like that, but he's too smart to just be a press secretary. Let's get him to work. And I mean, he's a businessman. He's been successful his whole life. Put him to work in a situation that would be more beneficial to the average American or the average person in North America. Than just, you know, a talking head or a guy answering to the news.
And you need people like Vivek and Elon who can take a little bit of heat, know how to, because they're going to take heat, right? Anybody in that role who's responsible for finding efficiencies will naturally get people up in a defensive mode. So a guy like Vivek and Elon can deflect that. I mean, that could be career ending or career making for a politician, right? So we'll see how there's other hey, can we talk about some of the other announcements? I mean, like, to be honest, I'm not an American commentator. I don't know a lot about American politics other than Donald Trump. It's going to be interesting. We're going to relearn these new characters, but do you have videos of their proposed border czar? I love that title, by the way. The border czar. I love that title.
I do, actually. And
what's his name? Tom Homan?
Tom Homan, I think it was.
Yeah, Tom Homan. I think it is. Yeah.
Pull that video up. I had that buried somewhere here. Just bear with me. Yeah, I do have him. His name is Tom Homan, and he's going to be the new border czar in America. Now, this is a famous bit that he had on 60 Minutes. It's making its rounds now. This is actually from a while ago, but this is him. I'll get to this bit in just a second. This is a promise he made at the National Republican Convention that just went by as a few months ago, and this is something that he made a promise of.
I got a message. As a guy who spent 34 years deporting illegal aliens, I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now.
Now, there's one bad news about that. There's
some serious bad news. We'll get to that in just a second. I do want to play this clip because I was setting the stage for it. This guy is pretty savage, and he's the no tolerance guy, right? They say no tolerance. The Democrats have come back at him with this.
He takes his oath to protect the U.S. seriously. He took an oath many times in his life. I mean, this guy's been a senior civil employee who's taken an oath many times in his life, and he takes his oath seriously.
Well, the political side of it is the Democrats, to thwart any efforts of detaining people. They made this whole idea that families were being separated. Now, if you're committing a crime, you'll get separated from your family. That's the way things go. But when it comes to deportations, this is what he had to say.
It would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
That's savage. It's absolutely savage, but it's true. Like if you've come into the country, you've done it illegally, you gotta go. It's this is the problem when it comes to immigration, is there are so many people doing it the right way, and they're on this giant waiting list. And why are they on a giant waiting list? Because there's a bunch of other paperwork for people who didn't do it the legal way, and they have to sift through all of this before they get to the people who are doing it the right way. So I think people who cross the border illegally, you jump a border, you don't cross at the port of entry, there should be an immediate ban from the country for X amount of years, and then you can come back and try again.
There should be, but there is a legitimate problem at the southern border, right? Like some of these guys coming across from countries like El Salvador and Guatemala or whatever, they're literally kidnapping children and using children and crossing the border and pretending to be families, hoping to get a little bit of lenient treatment. So that's a problem that they're going to have to deal with somehow or other. Well, the problem is children are being kidnapped. It's a secondary problem. But back to what we were saying. Two things. The other Tom, he's pissed off, so he will do what he says he's going to do. I know he's going to do it. I mean, I saw another interview where he talks about so he worked for Donald Trump once. He did not work in the same capacity under Biden. Of course, Biden replaced him. And then Trump apparently 6 months later said, "Hey, Tom, if I run again, are you coming back?" And in an interview, he said, "Donald, I'm so pissed off, I'll come back for free." So that guy wants to do it. But back to what we were saying earlier, it's bad news for Canada in a sense, because he just sent out a warning. He telegraphed his intentions to illegal aliens that he's going to deport you. Where do you think they're going to go? Some of them will probably sneak back into the southern border and try to come back in a second time. But I suspect a bunch of them will try and sneak into Canada.
Well, and that's a serious issue right now.
Yeah.
Table Salt put this on Twitter. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States who will be looking to extend their stay in North America. CTV reporting that Canada has only 3 detention centers. We're not prepared for what's coming. And this is a big issue, and it's already started. As we see here, buses are stopping at New York City shelters multiple times per day, picking up migrants and driving them to Canada in advance of the Trump migration crackdown. Again, we're not prepared for what's coming. And this isn't the only reports. We got viral news, New York City. I was told by a source at a migrant shelter that buses are pulling up at certain times of the hour and picking up migrants and driving them to Canada. I'm being told a majority of these migrants are leaving from Venezuela. He goes into talking about later on how he's hearing that a lot of these people are from the TDA gangs. So not nice people. And we're talking about people in Venezuela that when they were... Now, this is a reality of the situation. Now, Trump wasn't lying when he says they're not sending us their best.
No.
These kinds of things. We're talking about people who've been released from prison in these countries because they can't afford to keep these people sheltered. They say, go. I don't ever want to see you again. If we see your face again, you're done.
Next time it's going to be worse. Exactly.
Yeah. So these are criminals that are coming up these borders. And, you know, we saw what happened in Colorado, where these criminals were coming in and they were taking over apartment blocks, you know, with guns and saying, we're the landlords now. Like, is this the kind of thing we're expecting to happen here in Canada? Because this is probably what's going to happen. This is what's down the pipe.
Clyde, it's already happening. I think this week there was an incident there. Like, there was this massive shooting incident in Toronto, and it's like all these gangs. Now, in the case of Toronto, they weren't, you know, Southern American state or American continental, you know, they weren't Salvadorians, they were others. But yeah, we got a problem. And I actually looked into this. Like, you know how our governments keep saying, oh, they heard us and they're cutting back on immigration or whatever. It's not showing up in the numbers right now. I mean, like, you know, the immigration numbers, you can go to the Government of Canada website and see the numbers. We're not slowing down. I don't know when, if there's a slowdown, I don't know when it's supposed to happen. Like, I have no idea. No,
and with this new influx is going to be a massive, larger number. Now, is this going to be slowing down on legal immigration? I don't know. But all the illegal immigration is going to keep occurring. All these people applying for refugee status. I mean, we're talking about right now. It's a multifaceted situation, right? In Canada, we've had these LMIA scams. We've had these temporary student visa scams.
What were the other one called? The flagpole scam, or what was that one called?
Well, a flagpole scam is just you can't renew your visa, so you just go around the flagpole.
Yeah.
Without having to leave the country and re-enter. That's the flagpole scam. But there's a bunch of these scams that were happening. They say they're cracking down on the LMIA and the student visa stuff, but it turns out a number of these people that were waiting for renewals that are no longer eligible, they're just switching over to migration or refugee status.
Well, hey, can I tell you a weird story? It's related to this. My in-laws are snowbirds, but they don't go to the States. They go all the way down to Costa Rica. They've been doing this for about a decade. They just left like 10 days ago, and you know they park their truck here and then they leave from here. But they're going to Costa Rica, a teeny wee little country, and Costa Rica takes its like, I watched them dealing with the Costa Rican immigration. I go, wow, that's amazing. Like, they literally have to buy their ticket here. It has to be less than 6 months. Like, they have to have a return date when they go to Costa Rica that's less than 6 months. And even while they're down there, my in-laws once a year make a trip and leave Costa Rica for like 3 days in the middle of those 6 months and go next door to Panama, and then they make sure they get stamped. And my God, like, you got a little country like Costa Rica does a better job on managing its immigration than we do. Like,
yeah, and I mean, a lot of people will say that's by design. I mean, if we really wanted to crack down on our immigration, we absolutely could.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, when the Roxham Road thing, yeah, it's closed now, but does that mean people are not crossing there?
No.
Or they're just crossing a few blocks over, that kind of thing? Or,
well, even today, Freeland was interviewed on this, right? They can't escape this, right? So Freeland was talking about this, And she said, well, we'll beef up the number of border securities and we'll beef up border patrols. I'm like, we don't do border patrols. What are you talking about?
At all.
Border patrols. Like, my God. I mean, I live in
not
Alberta.
Only that,
there's only 6 border crossings in Alberta across 1,000 kilometers. You can cross into Alberta and Montana anywhere you want, folks. Like, but luckily they don't, because it's too cold here, I guess. But
but the thing is, like, when it comes to the Roxham Road situation, and it's very cold in Quebec, let me tell you, it's cold in Quebec, so they were doing it there too. But when it came to that situation, to thwart it, right, to say that they were doing something about it, they put an RCMP agent officer at the gates there. And what does he do? He has no authority to tell people they can't enter. All he has the authority of doing is arresting them once they enter. And that, like I've said this a million times, all you got to do is put a CBSA agent there to say, no, I can't allow you to enter. You're not allowed to enter.
I never understood Roxham, because it's literally 40 kilometers east and west of Roxham. There are proper border crossings. There used to be one at Roxham. It's been demolished. It's a complicated story, but it's also a story that doesn't have to be complicated, because all they have to do is amend the third country safe passage law or whatever, which we all know is bullshit, right? Like, if you the law says that if you're an immigrant from, I don't know, Venezuela, who lands through the US and comes into Canada and seeking asylum, that's what they're doing, right? They're seeking asylum out. Roxham was a way for them to seek asylum after they had crossed into the country. Because if they, you're right, you're exactly right. If there was a border security agent there and they said, we're seeking asylum, he'd turn him back and he would say, go enter at the proper spot. But they're seeking asylum once they're in. Yeah, they
should be sent home. And it wouldn't be that hard to just send those people home. And this is the reality of the situation, especially with an economic downturn, where it's going right now, and with the massive liability that we have. We have a relationship with the United States, and we really need to keep a good relationship here. And well, this isn't going to work out when the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's border czar says there's an extreme national security vulnerability along the Canada-U.S. border that he plans to deal with the moment the new administration takes power. This is a real scenario, a real situation. If you think we have problems with trade, just wait until we have problems with security at our border with the United States breathing down our neck on that. And I don't blame them one iota for being upset about it, because there's been reports of known bad guys are from other places in the world. I don't want to say the T word, but there have been reports that those people have come in through Canada and then entered the United States illegally through, irregular border crossings, as they call them, for very nefarious purposes. And I understand their hesitancy to make excuses for what it is that we're not doing.
It's interesting when that guy Tom views our border as a threat to him, and in that context, right? He's worried about people coming in from Canada into the US. I'm like, there will be some, but not as many. I'm more worried about the ones he's going to push out, and he doesn't care about those ones. Like, he's going to patrol his border, but if a bad guy who made it into his country wants to leave and come to Canada, Tom's going to help him out. So crazy. And so think about, I mean, it's no wonder, like, what did we do last week or earlier this week? Freeland, she's officially the deputy minister. And then she was in a meeting with Melanie Joly. They're worried about the U.S. and how to handle Trump. They struck up this new whatever they call it, a committee to consider our relationship with the U.S. I'm like, we shouldn't need that committee, man. We should be like, they should be our number one allies all the time. The fact
absolutely.
But they're worried about Trump because Trump is talking tariffs and all sorts of things.
Well, they're worried for the same reasons that they're worried about their Canadian public. That there's going to be more pressure on them to do the right thing. even though they've been doing the wrong thing all along. And this is the real reality of it when it comes to trade negotiations, because this is where they come in. Yes, the border, they're going to have to do something about that. And I don't think that they will. It'll be a Poilievre government that does that. But I think right now it's like trade negotiations. We're talking about the same people that went to Britain, the UK, and were told they walked away from the table. They walked away from the table in January saying, we just can't deal with your demands. Your demands are ridiculous with the cheese tariffs, 200.
Well, I think the Brits said
like
when you're serious, come back. So they basically said you're not a serious country. And Donald Trump is on the record as saying the exact same thing. Somebody asked him, like, will you invite Trudeau? And he's like, no, I'm not inviting that guy. He's not a serious person.
He's two-faced, he said.
Yeah, he said that. Exactly. Hey, did you see
I've got this clip here because I want to show that where he said that he's two-faced.
Mr. President, Susan Lee from Fox Business. Did you reject a one-on-one meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau?
Yeah, I did.
Why?
The tariffs are too high and he doesn't seem to want to move. And I've told him, forget about it. And frankly, we're very unhappy with the negotiations and the negotiating style of Canada. We don't like their representative very much. I love Canada, by the way.
Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night.
Well, he's two-faced. But, the truth is that I called him out, and I guess he's not very happy about it. We're being taken advantage of on trade. They put out a document. I don't know if you saw it. They didn't want me to see it, but we found it. Perhaps they were trying to show the power they have. It's close to $100 billion a year loss with Canada. We finished the meeting. Really, everybody was happy. I left it. It was very friendly. When I got onto the plane, I think that Justin probably didn't know that Air Force One has about 20 televisions. And I see the television. He's giving a news conference about how he will not be pushed around by the United States. And I say, push him around. We just shook hands. It was very friendly. He's two-faced. He's giving a news conference about how he will not be pushed around by the
exactly right. So this is the kind of prime minister that we have. We can't even trust him to talk to other world leaders.
No,
and not screw us over in the process. That's
you can tell. You can tell Donald's a real New Yorker, eh? In that first interview when he says, "Forget about it." Forget about it. Forget about it.
And that's what he said. Your tariffs are too high. You can't do this. Britain said the same thing. 225% on cheese imports. That's what they want. And it's all because we have some supply, supply, the government supplied cheese.
Yeah, the good news though is I looked at these numbers closely the other day. The trade, we are in kind of a trade balance with the US. So maybe it'll work itself out, right? You know what I mean? Like we send them $500 billion worth of stuff and they send us $500 billion. So at the end of the day, hopefully common sense prevails. I think in the case of Donald, it will. I mean, he's a businessman, right? I mean, he gets lumber from us. He gets oil. He gets oil at a discount that he resells. And I hopefully it works out, I mean, but yeah, poor Trudeau. And did you see what else happened this week? Like Indian television was showing protests in India. Like the Indians are protesting at the Canadian embassy in India. Like, we're alienating the US, we're alienating India, we're alienating, well, maybe not China. China's controlling us. That's something different. We're pissing off the Russians by taking sides. I think we're taking the wrong side in the Middle East. Like, man. And where's Trudeau today? Do you know where Trudeau is today? He's in the Bahamas. So
okay, cool. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And he can stay there, by the way. I was a little bit critical this morning, and then I thought about it. I'm like, you know what, Justin? If you want to go on vacation between now and October 20th, 2025, I'm okay with that. Like,
you know what, though? Of all the vacations he's had, it doesn't really help us. I know the less he does, the better, but we're in a really bad crunch. We're in a bad situation. And it's because of his government. It's straight up. I mean, look at the real GDP per capita numbers. And since he came into office till today, we have been stagnant. Where everyone else is growing.
Well, actually, look at the line, right? If you draw the line right where his head is there, that pin, that's 2014. We are pre 2014 numbers. GDP per capita is perhaps the best. It's the closest thing that you could call standard of living. So our standard of living has gone backwards. Well, hasn't gone forward or backwards. We're stuck at 2014.
It's complete. Yeah, stuck at that's a diminished return. That's for sure. We're not doing so hot, and I mean, people notice it. People are feeling it. People are commenting on it, saying like this is not how we wanna live in this country. So mind you, we keep talking about immigration, but we haven't been talking enough about the emigration numbers. Emigration, the people leaving the country, is at an all-time high. And when people leave the country, you're not losing paupers and people who are feeding off the system. You're losing engineers, doctors, people
mechanics. I'll say it.
Yeah.
Mechanics. Yeah.
Mechanics. People who are helping out. People who are contributing and adding to the benefits of everybody. And when we lose that, it's the big brain drain. That's what's happening in Canada right now. What do you do to that?
Well, I mean, we'll have to pick one of the maybe going forward, we should pick a couple of topics and really dissect some of these topics. Actually, you do that already on a weekly basis. I mean, what do we do for the brain drain for me is one that's frustrating. It's frustrating because I'm almost experiencing it here, right? I have 3 sons that graduated and they're all talking about this, right? I'd hate to see them go to the US for personal reason, maybe not actually, then I'll have an excuse to go visit them. But what's the solution to that? The solution to that is what Elon's about to do, man. We need, we're letting in a ton of immigrants because our birth rate is down. That's the fundamental reason, right? And our birth rate is down because people are taxed to death and they're afraid to commit to having kids and a family because they can't afford it. So it's an ugly spiral that's just not getting better. And I think the best way, you and I talk about this all the time, the best thing the government could do is shrink its size, stop with all these programs, get out of our way, lower taxes on Canadians so they have money left in their pockets at the end of the year. And maybe Canadians will want to settle down, have families, and have more than one kid. If we had, and this problem, I've been looking at this problem over and over. It didn't exist right up until about 1990. And suddenly in the 90s, I don't know, did the governments just get drastically out of control at that point? I think so. It's been spiraling out of control since 1990. And to me, the solution is that I don't want a country of 50 million or 100 million people. I think we'd be a beautiful country if we could stay at a steady, 35 million people with a birth rate of whatever, 2.2 kids per woman. I'll say it, per woman or per female.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, gov.exe, Kevin, he sent me this chart today, just showing where the money is. This is another reason why people are leaving, because when nominally you might start making more money, and the price of things is going up. Well, it's reflecting of this. Now, if you want to go somewhere else with your money, it's getting even more expensive. Why? Because the exchange rate is crippled in Canada. We're on the road to 60 cents a dollar. That's really where we're on the road to.
And then you should point that out to the viewers. That's the exchange rate, right? That's the Canadian,
to the US dollar. Yeah.
Yeah, and let me ask you this question, right? If there was no invisible border between Canada and the US, would the northern states that we are have such a low dollar value? No. But it's a political thing. We are non-productive. We're completely are we different than the United States in terms of technology, the education level of our population, the access to markets, our willingness to be to work? No, but
I'd say our government has limited our access.
That's what I was getting at. Our government has made us completely unproductive. I mean, and then that's another myth, right? Everybody says, "Oh, Canada benefits from a lower dollar because," and the old excuse used to be that we sell resources, and therefore, if the Canadian dollar was cheaper, the Americans would be more likely to buy our resources. The Americans will always buy our resources. If a barrel of oil was $70 or $80, they'd still buy it from us. Same with our steel. So yeah, it's like that's real, man. That exchange rate is 30%. And think of like how it manifests itself. If you're a hockey player, you talk about the brain drain or whatever. If you're a hockey player, do you want to play for the Edmonton Oilers or do you want to play for the Washington Capitals? Do you want to make $1 million Canadian or do you want to make $1 million American?
Well, that's it.
I'll take the million American.
Your sons, young engineers with a career ahead of them. Do I want to work for this company or a company just across the border making?
Do you want to work for Do you want to work for Canada Post or do you want to go work for SpaceX?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. That is a big difference right there. Unbelievable. But this is the trend here in Canada, and this is my worry, right? My worry is that we get a conservative government. After a year, because Jagmeet Singh won't let it go, and we'll get into that. He won't let it go. We get a conservative government, but does it take too long for recovery, or do they do enough that there is even a recovery?
I know where you're going with this. My fear is that Pierre, let's say it's Pierre, can't do it in 4 years. And even if he starts, it's so painful that people get upset right away, and then he doesn't have time to make the change, and people won't have time to see the benefits of the change, and then the Liberals come right back in. That's my fear. And
a worse Liberal or an NDP government for that matter. Something even further left with even more socialist ideology, and just platitudes. Platitudes will spend all the money that your children haven't earned yet, and that's it.
I'm afraid it might be a guy like Mark Carney, right? And Mark Carney is the same platitudes, the same silly ideas, controlled by the same people in Switzerland and at the United Nations. But Carney is better spoken than Trudeau, and he's a real threat. Let's fingers crossed. Let's not go there.
He's got the know-how to actually get things going. But let's talk about the possibility of another election. Well, Jagmeet Singh was at some of these. He was going. He's part of the Union Party, right? The NDP, the New Democratic Party. They've always been known as the ones to back organized labor. And because there's labor strikes looming all around the place, he's got to, pop his head out and show off and say the platitudes. Now, he was doing that with the labor disputes with the shoreline workers, the
port,
the shoremen,
the longshoremen,
longshoremen. So the port. And this is a big issue. This is a really big issue right now, because you talk about a dipping economy. This is the last thing you need in a dipping economy. First BC, now Montreal. What a pair of ports shutdowns mean for Canada. Now, this is actually a really good post by Global News where they get into this. Now, scrolling down the article just to get some of the numbers here. The guy they interviewed here, his name's Johnson, says the port of Vancouver handles about 800 million a day in freight, while the Montreal terminals handle roughly half that, totaling more than $1 billion in daily trade. So if they shut that down, which they're talking about, that's $1 billion in daily trade. Now, what the guy goes on to say in this article is that essentially in the future, like if we go through this and we have this trade dispute and we shut down the ports, this could have long-lasting damages, because a lot of companies, they rely on these ports to get their shipments, to their locations, not necessarily even in Canada. They're going through Canada to other places. They just they're en route, right? If we shut down our ports and we cause delays and we cause people to lose real money, they might have to find other means of getting their stuff to their locations. They find another trade route. And if they find another trade route, that it might be, easy to just say no to Canada in the future on bringing it back there because of regime uncertainty. The whole idea that we don't know if they're just going to have more labor disputes. This seems to be an annual basis for the longshoremen, and this is it's not good. And of course, Jagmeet Singh jumps into the ring to tell everybody, I've got your back, all of you workers, and I'm going to make this an issue of non-confidence in our government.
Oh, did he play that card again? I didn't see this video. What's he saying today?
Oh, he talks about the big bosses and whatnot, but then he says this line at the end here.
Big bosses' greed force these workers out. If they want to make any vote in Parliament that in any way impacts your rights, we're going to vote no. We're going to vote no. We tell that right now. That vote is a confidence vote or not, whether that triggers an election or not. I'm telling Justin Trudeau and the Liberals right now, you're never going to count on us if you're going to take away the rights of workers. Never.
Until they do. So what happened, because he's calling out Pierre Poilievre in this tweet, which is just sad in my opinion. But right after this, they enabled the back to work legislation, forcing negotiations and getting the labor dispute over with, which is, it's against the idea of organized labor and all this. I don't necessarily agree with all. I don't necessarily agree with both sides of it, right? That's my kind of stance on it. I don't see how unions should be exempt from competition laws and not companies, for example. This is a big thing that could be in a bigger topic, but at the end of the day, he's stuck his neck out saying he's gonna side. It's non-confidence if they do anything about it, and
they did,
and he's gone. There's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, well, you ever notice too? Like, I'd love if you could get him on your show,
Jagmeet Singh.
I'd love
the invite out there.
No, but you ever notice? Like, I've never seen him debate. I've never, ever seen him debate. Like, I've never seen him in a town hall where he takes questions. I've never seen him on a proper podcast or a proper debate. He avoids all debate. All he does is talk from his pedestal. He does not debate. Trudeau debates a little bit, but he gets blown away. That's one thing that's brilliant about Trudeau, about Poilievre. Poilievre's willing to go on stage. I love Danielle Smith for doing that. Maxime Bernier, I mean, I'm no fan of Maxime. I'm absolutely no fan of Maxime, but at least he gets out there and he debates. Jagmeet's the worst. Never, ever debate. So anyways, that's a separate issue, but
I've been too critical of Maxime. I just found out he stopped following me on Twitter. I guess he didn't like.
Well, he blocked me, so it's worse than he stopped following you, but at least he didn't block you. And the whole new blocking feature. I love the blocking thing on Twitter now. It basically doesn't exist, right? If you block somebody, you can still see what they're doing. You can't interact with them. I've had a great time. I know people thought they were going to have a fun time, trying to get under my skin. I don't give a shit. Because I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. If I tell you that immigration's out of control and you want to call me an asshole for doing it, I don't care. I'm just telling you the truth. Yeah. But it's been fun to go and see old accounts and get reacquainted with old accounts. I'd forgotten about that. Niels, Kaplan Mirth out of Ontario, that crazy anyways, let's.
Oh, I haven't even seen her much.
Yeah, it's fun to reacquaint. But anyways, long story short, or answer. So what happened with the ports? I missed today. So are the ports? So the government, the Minister of Labor, sort of stepped in and they're not on strike, or are they on strike?
Yeah, so it's one of those situations where they were saying that they were going on strike, and then it was supposed to be this like trickle sort of thing where they're gonna shut down a little bit here and there, not a full-on shutdown. And then the port shut down. The port was like, okay, everybody off the job, and they locked them out. So it was a lockout, and it's like, they wouldn't agree on the thing. So it's a dispute between the two, and the government stepped in and they said, okay, we're going to enact this legislation that will force them back to the table. get them to make an agreement and get back to work. So they're
Yeah,
back to
I mean, yes, I'm a libertarian and a capitalist, and I believe in, the right to strike and do things like that. But there are reasonable limits, right? I mean, if there's 43 restaurants in town and you guys want to strike at this one restaurant, I don't give a shit. There's 42 other restaurants I'm going to go to, and good luck with it. But when you hold a whole nation hostage because, like the article said, $800 million, that's not a small amount, man. Like, $800 million, like, if a giant sea can full of spark plugs is stuck there, doesn't sound like much. It's a sea can of spark plugs, but that means that there's a car plant in Ontario that for 3 days can't make a car because it has no spark plugs. You know what I mean? Like one spark plug, no spark plug in the car, no car gets sold. And so for a handful of workers to hold another handful of workers hostage, that's unfair because those guys in Ontario can't reciprocate. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
well, and this is where my not so much love of unions comes in. I grew up in a union town. I've never been a union guy. I know union guys, and I know the infighting between union guys. You'd have people in one plant. You think that they're all friends and they're all comrades,
brothers. They call themselves,
yeah, and they're not. They're constantly screwing each other over. For their own benefit, for their own local benefit, they'll halt the production line, and they don't care that halts all the production lines on the other places, and they don't care. It's just about them and themselves. So to say that this is about all workers and everybody's united is absolutely false. One thing we have to understand about unions and what makes them even legal is the fact that they are exempt from competition laws. In the United States, it would be what's the term? Not competition, antitrust laws. So if say you and I, Marty, we had a business, we both had businesses, and we sold a similar item, and we said, hey, Marty, how about we both raise our prices a little bit?
$9.99 each.
Yeah. That agreement is completely illegal. But if you and I are workers on a production line, and we say, hey, how about we raise the labor rate to this?
That's legal.
That's legal, and that's something that a lot of people who are in business are not very happy with, and unions being organized in a lot of businesses means the end of the business in a lot of cases. So, and where you will find this, sticks around is at places like ports where it's a geographical location that can't be changed. You're not going to put a port down the street. It's not available
to compete against that one. I mean, and that exactly. So there's only limited places where we can put ports. So once somebody has the port, they basically have a monopoly. And in this country, and in most countries, monopolies sometimes are the only practical way, but then it comes with a few restrictions. So, and I think a port is a good example. You're granted a natural monopoly that you need, and there has to be protections for the people who grant that natural monopoly. So,
and the people that use the port, and that's the thing, the people who rely on that port to get their products, shipped to this place or that place.
These guys have all been quiet this week, man. Like there hasn't been a lot of chat. Trump is dominating the agenda. I'm still waiting for the cabinet shuffle to occur under Trudeau. He hasn't shuffled his cabinet. I'm still waiting. Apparently, Jagmeet and the Bloc and everybody else has pretty much said they're going to vote a non-confidence motion. Well, let's have one of those. It's a weird. I think they're just going to drag it out, right? Like they're running the clock on Parliament right now because the next break's around Christmas kind of thing. So they're going to run the clock for a while. Interesting.
Yeah, they don't want to. They don't want any more trouble. Is what they don't want.
No. Hey, let me ask you the question. We didn't talk about this. Did you go to the Remembrance Day ceremonies in your town? Did you have a chance to do that, or?
I didn't have a chance. No, I
No.
stayed home with my family on.
Yeah, I went to ours, and I generally try and go every couple of years or every year. And the nearest town for me is a little town of about 15,000 people, and I was pretty happy. Like about 1,000 people, like they had to block off a whole giant area of the street, and so I was happy to see that. About 1,000 people came out for Memorial. We were out there. It was a nice day. It lasted an hour and a half, and I was talking to people in the crowd, and there was a sense that people are realizing that we took some of our freedoms for granted in these last couple of years. So it was good to see that. Good to see that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, there's all the reports, second year in a row, reports of chaplains being told that they can't have prayers at places. I don't know if they're just going above those rules, but it's in the rule book apparently. Under
we at the ceremony I went to, there was a chaplain. I couldn't see. I was too far back. I don't think he was a military chaplain, but somebody came out and had a prayer, so that was good to see. One thing that always warms my heart is, it opened with an "O Canada" version, and people sang it. And I love when people sing "O Canada" and they say, "In all thy sons command." To me, I sing it the way I learned it. And I think especially when you're singing it at a memorial event where we're commemorating soldiers, yes, I get it. There was women in wars. Women played an important role. I absolutely understand that. But to be honest, the majority of people killed in our 2 world wars and the other ones were men. So to say in all thy sons command, I think in that instance is appropriate. But there were bozo eruptions. There was a couple of weird cases. Did you see the one? There was one in Ontario. One of the school boards got in Ottawa. One of the school boards got criticized for playing some sort of Palestinian hymn or song, and people are like, "What is that all about?" And then there was
one protest at one ceremony. I can't remember. Was it in Ottawa where a bunch of Palestinian protesters came out and tried to make it their event?
Yeah,
and
then
it has
there
nothing
was
to do with the wars that we officially got ourselves into and served with our military,
no
men and women, right?
Well, the one I found really repulsive is the people that took poppies and painted them, the 4 leaves of the poppy, black, green, white, and red. Come on, folks, pick a different, if pick a different symbol. The poppy is ours, right? I mean, and I've seen no, pick a different symbol. The other one that was really weird was there was a school in Nova Scotia that sent out a letter saying that if you were parents or friends or family coming to the ceremony and you were members of the Canadian Armed Forces, please come in civilian clothing. That one got nipped in the bud. As soon as that school put out that newsletter like that, the Premier Houston of Nova Scotia interfered and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I mean, I'd go one step further. I mean, to me, there needs to be discipline for principals and school boards that take it that far. That's just
into their own hands. Where would they even get that idea? That's just the most ludicrous thing that I've ever heard.
It's completely, and they justify it's we don't want to scare the kids. It's what, you don't want to scare the kids? So if a cop comes over to the school,
quit with the drag queens at school.
Yeah.
Scare kids. Jeez.
Yeah. No. The people have weird ideas, and we're running out of time. So maybe we'll make a note, because we have a weird, just on this thought, right? I've been saying this to people. I think there's a tipping point of this woke culture. I think we're seeing, Trump is scared the shit out of the American of the woke culture in the U.S. Right? It's coming to an end. He won't have any of that. He's appointing a new Minister of National Defense. He said all the woke policies are coming out of the military. They won't have tampons. Blah blah blah.
Out of education as well.
So the Americans are doing it. Canadians are going to have to respond and do something similar. I hope we don't go the opposite and double down and try to be so different from the Americans that we get even more woke.
I see a movement, and I like to be, bring the white pill in here. Maybe I sound a little down tonight, but I do want to say that I think that there's a very good opportunity for us to be streamlined with the United States in this one. There was a clear, concise victory with Trump across the board. The Republicans won across the board, and this is the strides in that direction are happening in Canada. When we do have an election, finally, it's looking like it's going to be a landslide with the Conservatives, and I think that there's a possibility for us to have a mandate on both sides of the border to set things straight, economically, socially, all of it. We can set things straight and get out of this.
Well, like Trump is, yeah, you won't hear DEI come out of Trump. You won't hear ESG. You won't hear climate change. You won't hear net zero. You won't hear any of those things, right? And so, oh God, please, like, don't send. Whatever you do, Justin, do not send Stephen Guilbeault to the U.S. to negotiate anything on our behalf.
I hope he does. I am looking.
Oh, do you? Just for the comedic.
Absolutely, I want to see him be embarrassed, and I think Canada should. People should have red on their face over that. That's our elected official.
We send him once. He gets ridiculed. He gets sent back home, and then
embarrass all of Canada because of it. Please.
Okay, then we get serious, and that's my word of advice to hear. And like the first premier to embrace Donald and send a true, solid, trade delegation to the U.S. You will benefit. Like Danielle, do that. Even EB, I mean, do it. Like, just go down Trump. Don't fight him. Embrace him, and it'll be good. It'll be good. Yeah, you guys are still counting your votes, man. I
don't get it. It only means that it's just sus. That's all. Marty, where can people find you?
Marty Up North on Twitter. And actually, do me a favor, folks. Come find me on YouTube as well. I'll put out a new YouTube video right away here, but I'm so close to 25,000 people on YouTube. Get me over that hurdle, and then I'd appreciate that.
You guys, we're like back and forth. Like you've got the big following on Twitter, you've got the big following on YouTube here. Maybe we could get some back and forth happening there.
I like the instantaneous feedback of Twitter. I truly love it. Like I said today, I joked about it. You don't know. You make fun of Canada Post, and you get this weird, crazy, positive feedback. I'm like, okay, I'll do that again.
I'll have to pay attention to the comments.
Yeah,
for sure.
I got letters, DMs. I swear to God, I got people like. I'm respecting people. I'm not putting them out there, but some of the people made it sound like it was the toughest, most dangerous job on the planet, delivering mail.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, folks. See you next week.